The Sunfallen Road, Chapter 11. Life settled into a strange routine. For a while after Rudy came, I jumped at every sound an approaching stranger, thinking the regent of Berlin would send one of her guardians to assassinate me. Vampires attacking one another was against our laws, although it remained fairly commonplace. If anyone besides Silver had known, I would have been punished. But no one came. It pained me to harm him, to part with him, and I stayed sad about it for many days afterwards. Not even Silver's gentle smile could comfort me. I spent a lot of time in the garden, or in my special haven upstairs, the Greco-Roman bath and garden I had fashioned with my own hands, thinking sordid thoughts. One day, Silver found me quite by accident as I leaned my head on the edge of the bath, more a small pool than anything else, lost in my thoughts, not a stitch of clothing on. I never showed this place to anyone, but I had neglected to shut the door when I'd come in. The door to my garden blended into the wall of one of the second-floor corridors. It had a keyhole, barely discernible, but I rarely locked it up. I just pressed a spot on the door, and there I was. I didn't notice him until he was walking through the soft grass that grew on the sod I had laid myself. I looked up at him, and the sense of relief I felt at the idea that this place wasn't a secret anymore was completely inexplicable. I saw him there, and instead of feeling caught or spied upon, as any normal person might at having a sanctuary entered by a stranger, I felt that he belonged there, that he was welcome. "You never told me about this place," he said, in a tone that almost suggested he might be hurt by this. I pulled myself out of the bath and walked towards the stone bench across from it, retrieving a towel. He gawked. I didn't altogether mind. As I dried myself off, I said, "I come here when I need comfort, or when I need to be alone." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go then." He reluctantly pulled his eyes from me and turned to go. No, that's all right," I said, wrapping the towel around my body and sweeping my curls over my right shoulder. "You're welcome to stay." And I smiled, so he'd know I meant it. He nodded. "Pardon me for saying so, Melpomene," he began. I knew what he was going to say, but I wanted to hear it anyway. It had been too long. I smiled at him. "Yes?" "You're very beautiful," he said softly. I stepped toward him, kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you." He turned his face, smiling. He tasted a little salty, like he'd just come from working, but it was a good taste. I could smell his blood. I knew exactly how he would taste. I pulled away, and his eyes looked surprised, and maybe hurt. I leaned my forehead against his. "I haven't eaten yet, and I don't want to take any of your blood. Not even a little," I said quietly. "But you will take someone else's," he said, in what was almost an accusatory tone. "I have to. It's the only way I can survive," I said. He nodded and sighed. He looked around. "This place is beautiful." "Thank you." "Did it come with the house?" "No, I built it inside this third story." "No way!" he exclaimed, surprised. "You did all this?" "I'm very strong and very fast," I said, smiling at him. "Yes, I did all this." "It's amazing," he said. I smiled again. I hadn't realized until right then that I'd wanted to show it to someone, show them what I'd built with my own hands, that I'd wanted them to find it as beautiful as I did. The bath, the grass, the hanging flowers, the pillars of stone. It reminded me of Greece, its ancient architecture and its gardens. I had a piece of my history right here in my house. "I have to go out for a while," I said, moving towards the stairs. "I have business in the city." "Anything you want me to do?" he asked. I smiled. "Do whatever you like. Eat, drink, relax, anything you want." He smiled back. "All right. When should I expect you back?" I looked at him. Suddenly I understood that despite the fact that I was many times stronger than he was, faster, with many talents, when I wasn't with him, he worried about me, just as he might another human being. I was touched. Blood tears threatened my eyes. He moved towards me, thinking I was sad. What's wrong, Mel? I shook my head and smiled. Nothing. I'll be back home around 1. If you're still up, maybe we can spend some time together, I'd like that, he said, taking my hand, cool to the touch. I squeezed his carefully. All right, then. I dressed in a black pencil skirt, a short-sleeved green business-like blouse, and black heels. I fastened the cross Silver had given me around my neck, considered myself in the mirror. My green eyes echoed 3 different colors. My curls cascaded down my back, unbound for the first time in many moons. I smiled, picked up my purse, and headed out into the warm and breezy evening. I hunted. I used the shadow gift, stalking the ones with evil in their hearts. I took a little from each, whispered suggestions of change in their ear. Some of them would make different lives. Some would go on, hurting others. But with every hunt, I was there, whispering into their minds, bending their thoughts to mine. When I had satisfied my thirst, I went to the regent's home, where, as usual, he was holding court. Michael Glass was his name. He wasn't quite as arrogant as the Parisian regent had been, but nevertheless he wore his power like a coat and was quite plain as to who he favored and who were the pariahs at his court. I had never thought about it until I laid eyes on him that evening, perhaps because I'd grown used to vampire snobbery. But once I did think about it, I thought about what Silver would say, and I almost looked at him with disdain before I caught myself. "Good evening, Lady Aguilar," he said in his deep voice. His brown eyes glittered. He was also of Greek descent, though his father had been mostly English, hence his paler skin, hair that swept back from his forehead in smooth waves, and dark brown eyes. "We have missed you at court." "Everyone needs a vacation now and then, Your Grace," I said with a half-smile, and some of his attendants chuckled, as did he. But I assumed he would call me if there had been some task that needed my attention. "I would have, yes," said the regent. "I trust you had a restful few days?" "I did, thank you, Your Grace," I said, inclining my head. "It is fortuitous that you are here now," he said, beckoning to one of his attendants. "This is not urgent, but I am having a bit of trouble interpreting the tone of this message. I was hoping you might assist me." He took a letter from one of them and proffered it. I stepped forward and seated myself on a lower chair by his rather opulent one. I read the letter carefully. It was from the Regent of Paris. "I cannot make out whether he is offering help or mocking us," said Glass, idly toiling with the seal ring on his left pinky finger. The letter was an offer of security assistance from the Parisian regent. Apparently, he was at least marginally aware of our problem. Chicago had one of the highest vampire populations on the continent, and certainly policing them was a problem. It made me think of Marguerite de la Rue's complaint. "I think the offer of help is sincere," I said, handing the letter back to Glass, "and I think it may be wise to accept his offer." He looked faintly surprised. "Why?" I spoke to him first of the security problem in the city in general, and then of Lady de la Rue's situation in particular. "If we were to accept the help of the Parisian regent," I said, "we would not only be able to more efficiently police our own, but also address Lady de la Rue's problem at the same stroke." He considered. "I wonder what they would ask in return." "Probably the usual," I said. "A salary and housing for whomever they send, plus applicable fees in addition. The Parisian court is short of money these days, and we are far from it. I would imagine the Regent of Paris is expecting we will respond in kind with an offer." He nodded. "Very well." He smiled at me, but his was an inhuman, cold, very vampire-like smile. It was so unlike Silver's. "Take this letter and compose a reply, and return with it tomorrow. Your Grace. There is one more matter I wish to discuss." "What is it?" "I would ask your permission to engage a vassal, Your Grace." "A human?" "Yes." "How did you meet him?" "In House de la Rue," I answered. "Is he trustworthy? Will he keep the conspiracy?" he asked, looking at me inquisitively. "Without a doubt." "Then you have my permission," said Glass, "so long as you are not taking a vassal from Lady de la Rue without her permission." "I am not, Your Grace." "Very well. I will see you tomorrow evening, Lady Aguilar." He waved his hand, and I descended the dais, keeping my face averted so no one would see the look of delight on my face. I returned well before 1, and as I thought he would be, Silver was still awake and in the machine room. He wasn't gaming today, just surfing the internet, and he waved at me as I entered. I threw my purse down by the door and kicked off my heels. What an insufferable bastard that Michael Glass is. Who? Michael Glass. He is the regent of Chicago. I work for him. Oh. I'd since explained to him about the vampire system of government. You're his diplomat? Yes. So you weren't lying when you told me that you worked in government, he said, laughing. I chuckled. Not a bit. Why is he insufferable? Most regents are. They get drunk with power and look down on people for miles around. Come to the kitchen with me. I want to cook. He followed me into the kitchen where I commenced making salt and pepper shrimp. Does cooking make you feel better? He asked, as he watched me prepare the food. Always, I said. Why? 2 reasons. 1, I usually get to cut things up or pound things in or throw things around. And 2, it makes me feel human again, since humans need to eat to survive. I cling to things that remind me of what it is to be human for some reason. It's quite the joke among other vampires who learned of my fascination. He laughed, but then considered. Have you ever thought that you'd want to be human again? You asked me that before. Yes, but you didn't really answer me. I put down my spatula and sighed. I have thought it more times than you could ever imagine. What do you really want to do? Silver asked me suddenly, as we relaxed in the library with cups of hot chocolate. It was a cool evening for summer, and I'd found myself in the mood. I'd made us both huge steaming cups of the stuff with whipped cream and peppermint syrup. Silver loved sweet things, as I'd discovered. When he said this, I looked at him with mild surprise. What do you mean? You were talking about what a jerk that guy Michael Glass is, said Silver. Why do you work for him? I thought about it for a long moment. I'd never really considered why I kept working for regents. Probably just because the work was there, I was good at it, and maybe working kept me from despair. I suppose it's because I never really considered not working, I replied. After a while, I got quite a reputation as a diplomat, so I went around the world working for different courts, and this is just one more in the chain. But what else do you do? What else do you want to do besides work? He asked. I shrugged. What else does one do with eternity? I don't know, he said. Read, travel, explore, lots of things. I considered. Where would you go? Everywhere, was the prompt reply. I laughed. I like that idea. So why don't you? I considered. To be honest, if I quit my job today, I'm not sure I'd really need to work for quite some time, I said thoughtfully, if ever. He blinked. You're that rich? When you spend 2 centuries doing nothing but work and have almost no expenses, you save a few bucks, I said, grinning at him. He chuckled. I can imagine. We looked at each other, and in that precise moment, we decided we were going to leave, without speaking a word. But in that moment, I also realized that the voices hadn't been clamoring in some weeks. I heard them whispering now, though, but not in the way they usually did. They sounded soothed today, as though Silver's very presence calmed my mind. I marveled at him in that moment, and I wondered again about his transformation. I can get you a passport. How? I have connections. It would make it easier if we had your documents, though. I don't suppose you can get them from home? He shook his head. Probably not. Pity. But no, it's no trouble. Give me some time to settle things, and we will talk about what to do. Silver smiled. It was a pure, radiant smile, and it made me so happy to see it. You got it, Mel.